Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Vince Coglianese.
Well. Good afternoon to you. 4:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Adam Brandon, president of FreedomWorks. We'll get into the details of the spending fight going on in Congress. Shutdowns are coming. Guess who doesn't get shut down, though? The Ukrainian government. Yeah, they'll be fine, and we'll keep paying for it. Federal employees, tough luck. Matt Rosendale will join us as well, the congressman, at 5:30. It's all ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yes, if a shutdown arrives, you know how this works. Federal employees and federal contractors will be faced with furloughs, not getting paid, but Ukrainian government employees are going to be made whole throughout the entire shutdown. That's the plan already. I'll get into more details on that coming up. Where's all that money going? Yeah. Speaking of money, it's falling out of the pockets of one United States senator. Bob Menendez indicted last week for corruption, and he's had a long career of corruption, so it's catching up with him yet again. He's hired. Did you see he hired the lawyer whose job it is to handle corruption for the Democrats? He's hired Abby Lowell, a partner at Winston & Strawn LLP, famous attorney. He's becoming quickly the go-to guy for Democrats facing corruption charges. He's you know who else he represents? Hunter Biden. He represents Hunter Biden. So Hunter Biden's attorney is now working for Bob Menendez. Bob probably saw that sweetheart deal and said, hey, I'd like to get me one of those. Can I get one of those, please? So we'll see if it happens. Menendez came out today and had a statement for the press. He delivered it in English and Spanish. Now, the reason he delivered it in Spanish is because he wants to emphasize that he's not just an old white guy, although he looks like one. He claims he's not. I'm not just an old white guy. I am a victimized minority. In fact, the reason I'm even being prosecuted is because I'm Hispanic. That's the defense he's relying on in this, because he doesn't really have a defense of any meaning, although he tries today. He cooks up another one. He says that he has all this cash because he just loves keeping cash around the house. Here's Menendez today.
Good morning. Thank you to all of you who are here today, especially the New Jerseyans who have joined me as I address the events of the last few days. On Friday, the Southern District of New York brought charges against me. I understand how deeply concerning this can be. However, the allegations leveled against me are just that, allegations. For anyone who has known me throughout my 50 years of public service, they know I have always fought for what is right.
50 years? Okay. I mean, right? Term limits or what, huh?
My advocacy has always been grounded in what I learned from growing up as a son of Cuban refugees, especially my mom, my hero, Evangelina Menendez.
These people are so brazen. My parents were Cuban refugees. I'm a real American story, including all of the corruption. What do you mean by that?
Everything I've accomplished, I've worked for, despite the naysayers and everyone who has underestimated me.
Yeah, they wouldn't have given me those gold bars if I didn't do what they wanted. I had to work to get the Egyptian government that information.
I recognize this will be the biggest fight yet, but as I have stated throughout this whole process, I firmly believe that when all the facts are presented, not only will I be exonerated, but I still will be the New Jersey's senior senator. For now, I want to address four things. First, a cornerstone of the foundation of American democracy and our justice system is the principle that all people are presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Remember that standard? Democrats gave that one up a while ago. Adam Schiff is, oh yeah, Trump is definitely guilty of collusion. We know that for a fact. Democrats across the country right now are trying to remove Donald Trump from ballots on the basis of no conviction whatsoever. They're saying he's guilty of an insurrection. He's not even charged with anything like that. But they say he's guilty anyway. He needs to be removed from the ballots. It's guilty until proven innocent. In fact, in Trump's case, it's guilty and you have no way out. That's the standard of justice they have for him and anybody who's ever supported him. But for Menendez, all of a sudden, the justice system of yesteryear is called upon. It's innocent until proven guilty. I just want everybody to remember that. That's the standard.
All people. I ask for nothing more and deserve nothing less. The court of public opinion is no substitute for our revered justice system. We cannot
The one that says you're corrupt as hell.
set aside the presumption of innocence for political expediency when the harm is irrevocable.
What if you have an entire career of corruption allegations stacked up against you? What do you think the court of public opinion should do with that?
To those who have rushed to judgment, you have done so based on a limited set of facts framed by the prosecution to be as salacious as possible.
Now he's attacking prosecutors. Do you hear him? He's attacking federal prosecutors. These dastardly prosecutors, they frame things to be as salacious as possible. Prosecutors are awful, says Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat.
Remember, prosecutors get it wrong sometimes. Sadly, I know that.
Listen to him, undermining democracy with every syllable.
Instead of waiting for all the facts to be presented, others have rushed to judgment because they see a political opportunity for themselves or those around them. All I humbly ask for in this moment, in my colleagues in Congress, the elected leaders, and the advocates of New Jersey that I have worked with for years, as well as each person who calls New Jersey home, is to pause and allow for all the facts to be presented.
Yeah, just wait for all the facts. Innocent until proven guilty. Whatever happened to that? How did that fall by the wayside, asks a Democrat, head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. How did that happen? It was you. It was your party who did that. Here's Bob Menendez explaining why money was all over his house, nearly $500,000.
For 30 years, I have withdrawn thousands of dollars in cash from my personal savings account, which I have kept for emergencies and because of the history of my family facing confiscation in Cuba.
What is he talking about? Are you listening to this? Where do you live now? You live in America. You don't live in Cuba. So you're saying that you've been withdrawing cash out of your savings account for years. For over 30 years, I've been withdrawing thousands of dollars in cash. Now, again, $500,000 is what we're talking about. Thousands of dollars in cash for emergencies, and because of the history of my family facing confiscation in Cuba. So here you have a Democrat United States Senator implying that the reason he has to take so much cash out of his bank account over all those years is because he's worried that this government, the United States government, is going to confiscate his money. Are you listening to this? Now, this guy is a conspiracy theorist extraordinaire. He's saying, the prosecutors are corrupt. They're getting it wrong. I'm innocent. I did nothing wrong. And I've been taking this money out because I don't want it to be confiscated by the government. Or maybe he means the Cuban government. Maybe the Cuban government is going to come and confiscate his cash here in the United States of America, a sitting United States senator. Does any of that make sense?
Now, this may seem old-fashioned, but these were monies drawn from my personal savings account based on the income that I have lawfully derived over those 30 years. I look forward to addressing other issues at trial.
Oh, man. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to take $500,000 out of your savings account and just stuff it into your shirt pockets and jacket pockets and socks all around the house? And why would you divvy up the money like so? If you took out $500, that's a lot of money. But if you saved any cash in your house, and you may do that, wouldn't you have it in kind of like, if not one, a couple centralized locations? You'd have a specific spot where you I keep it there in that safe, in that shoebox under the floorboards or whatever. You got some cash somewhere. He's keeping it in. They said they found it in all sorts of clothing all over the house, stuffed in envelopes, in pockets, and the envelopes have the DNA of the person who was paying the bribe, the feds say. Where do you get DNA from an envelope? Probably licking. You lick the envelope closed. They found the DNA on this stuff. They measured. That matches the other defendant. This guy's paying the bribes. Who gave him all this money? Well, who licked the envelope? It was the same guy. So was your buddy, this guy who represents the interests of the Egyptian government, was he there every time you withdrew money from your personal savings account? Here, I don't like licking envelopes. Let me hand this to my envelope licker. He's standing right next to him. Let me close that up for you. Here, stuff that into one of my jackets. We'll just keep it there. So that's Menendez today saying, yeah, look, that's just my thing. I just keep money everywhere. What do you want me to do? Don't hassle me. It's because of the history of confiscation of money in Cuba. I'm old-fashioned, he says. Now, he also decides to slip into Spanish to pretend that he's some sort of oppressed class. He's a victimized minority, and he wants you to know that he can speak Espanol.
I remain focused on continuing to do the important work I do every day on behalf of the 9 million people who call New Jersey home, including doing everything we can this week to avoid a government shutdown, deliver critical funding for states affected by catastrophic natural disasters, and ensure the people of Ukraine have everything they need to defeat Putin. And I'll return to Washington this week to do exactly that. Now, let me just say a few words in Spanish. Buenos días. Gracias a todos los que están aquí, especialmente los residentes de New Jersey que me acompañan hoy, mientras realizo comentarios.
And he goes on and on and on. He does the whole statement over again, this time en Espanol. And at the end of it, he says, thank you very much. And he's surrounded himself by people who I'm assuming he handed hundreds of dollars to before the beginning of this press conference, because they then explode into applause at the end of his statement. And listen to this. Not only are there people applauding, but some reporters ask real questions as he hurries out of the room without taking them.
Mi promesa y mi obligación al pueblo. Volveré a Washington esta semana para hacer exactamente eso. Thank you very much.
Yay! Everyone's like so excited. Yay! He keeps $500,000 in his house. Yay! And so nothing about that makes sense. Why would people be exploding into applause? Like, obviously, you got to believe those people were paid off. Somebody handed them gold bars before they walked into the room. And Menendez finishes his statement, and says, thank you very much. He walks off. And you can hear the reporters there. Let me replay it a little bit. Very difficult to hear these reporters, but they shout out things like, are you running for re-election? Are you going to run or not? He doesn't answer the question. What about the gold bars? How did you get the gold bars? Some woman is yelling. And then she yells at the end, what about the Mercedes? like, is that an old holdover from Cuba? You get a Mercedes paid for? I've got to have somebody pay for a Mercedes for me because of my experience with the communists in Cuba. What does your experience in Cuba have to do with that? Again, here's the end of that. You can hear these questions being shouted out.
Borders, and they've got a...
Here's Menendez. Here he is.
Pueblo, volveré a Washington esta semana para hacer exactamente eso. Thank you very much.
Are you running for re-election? Are you running for re-election? What about the gold bars? Where did the gold bars come from? And he barrels out of the room. No answers. Because he's corrupt. The whole thing is so crazy. And they're prosecuting him now. A bunch of Democrats have called for his head. He's got to go. There's corruption going on in this party. Phil Murphy wants him to go. The governor of New Jersey. A whole cast of characters. Among them is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She really wants Menendez to step aside. It's time. And so this weekend, she was on CBS's Face the Nation, and she was asked a question about how Senator Bob Menendez, this is such an amazing setup. Bob Menendez is an oppressed minority, and he says that that's the reason he's being attacked. What do you say?
Well, I think the situation is quite unfortunate, but I do believe that it is in the best interests for Senator Menendez to resign in this moment. As you mentioned, consistency matters. It shouldn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat.
Yes.
The details in this indictment are extremely serious.
This is a woman who pretended to marry the man that she lives with. You remember, we covered this last week. She's in this phony marriage with her fiance or whatever. Or if she is married, she's breaking the law right now because she refuses to admit what his finances are in congressional disclosures. She's trying to have it both ways. Her office put out a statement saying, she's not technically married, so she doesn't have to file the... Well, then why does she keep calling this guy her spouse in public and in congressional filings? So she's either lying about their, in order to cover up their financial status, or she's lying about her marriage.
Involve the nature of not just his, but all of our seats in Congress. And while, as a Latina, there are absolutely ways in which there is systemic bias, but I think what is here in this indictment is quite clear. And I believe it is in the best interest to maintain the integrity of the seat.
She can't even give up the ruse for this. She's like, it's true, as a Latina. There's systemic bias. It's all over the place. I haven't been able to get ahead. Look at me. Like, I've been held back in life. Just imagine how much further I would be along if it wasn't for systemic bias against me. I don't know. We let a moron become a congresswoman. I think that's pretty great, actually. That's. I don't know. Is that evidence of bias against you? That sounds like you won a contest or something. Actually, didn't she actually win a contest? Somewhere in her career, she won a contest to be put forward as a congressional candidate, I think. So anyway, so she's somehow in Congress now, and she says there's systemic bias against her. She leads a privileged life, as she doesn't even detect it. 422 now.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 p.m.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Yeah, I looked it up. I thought AOC had won a contest to become a member of Congress. I'd heard something like that in the past. What it actually was is her brother just submitted her name to this socialist group called Brand New Congress. And so they called her and said, hey, you want to run for Congress? She's like, sure. And she became a member of Congress. It's remarkable. And she's acting like, she's oppressed. She's also claimed at one point, she drives a Tesla around this, like she's mad about that now because Elon Musk is the owner of Tesla. She was asked over the weekend, I thought you were going to buy a union-made car. Why didn't you do that yet? You still own a Tesla. These are the kinds of questions they have on CBS. This is what they really care about.
Our car was purchased during the pandemic when before a vaccine had come out. So travel between New York and Washington, the safest way that we had determined was an EV, but that was prior to some of the new models coming out on the market that had the range.
Can her Tesla actually make it to New York and back? Is that possible?
Available, but we're actually looking into trading in our car now.
Wow. Riveting. But you burned a question on why don't you have a union-made electric car? It's unbelievable. Just how are our elites decadent or what? They talk about not having your eye on the ball. Why aren't you driving a union-made electric car? You said you would. Well, we're in the market right now for a vehicle. It's like so thoroughly disconnected from what everyone else is feeling. We're looking for one that can make it to New York and back, preferably without us driving, so we can concentrate on TikTok. Okay. Thanks, Congresswoman. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Adam Brandon as Congress debates these spending bills. Do we have a government shutdown coming? And how much does it matter? That's all ahead. Good afternoon to you. 436 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Congressman Matt Rosendale will be with us at 5:30, and we'll chat with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Reuters reporting today, the U.S. House is to press forward with spending cuts despite shutdown risk. The Republican-controlled House of Representatives is due to try to advance steep spending cuts this week that stand no chance of becoming law and could force a partial shutdown of the U.S. government by next Sunday. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy sought to avoid that scenario when he hammered out a spending agreement with Democratic President Joe Biden this spring, but some members of his own party have threatened to depose him if he does not support steeper cuts that are sure to be rejected by the Democratic-controlled Senate. It's interesting. Survey data from over the weekend, polls showed that voters right now, if the government were to shut down, so to speak, they would blame Biden. Biden and the Democrats wield the majority of the blame should that come to pass. For more on this, I want to bring in Adam Brandon. He's the president of FreedomWorks. He's following all of it closely. Adam, good to have you with us again, sir.
Oh, thanks very much, and it's an important topic. I can't believe we're having this conversation, and just last week we crossed over $33 trillion in debt.
What does that do? What does that mean to the average American? When you reach $33 trillion in debt and climbing, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, because remember, in less than 10 years, we're going to cross over $50 trillion. Even if we have a great debt deal, you're probably still crossing over $50 trillion in somewhere between 8 to 10 years. And, look, I came to this town in the early 2000s, and this was the issue I wanted to work on, was debt and deficit. And we haven't done it. And honestly, it seems like it's okay, right? Like you just hear these incredible numbers, 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 30 trillion. And, your life just continues on. But I'll note something that's changing for everyone. It's these higher interest rates. And these higher interest rates are a sign of things to come, because pretty soon, if the government, we're about to probably the next couple of years spend more on defense. I'm sorry, more on interest than we do on defense. Yes. So right now you're spending about $850 billion. You're going to spend about $750 billion. And all of this debt that's at 2 or 3% that's going to have to be reset when it comes due. What that happens is that you, Joe taxpayer, you're going to have to compete with the government for money, which means interest rates are going to go up. That means college is going to be more expensive. That means you're going to have a hard time moving. You want a new car? It's going to be a lot more expensive. So that's the beginnings. I think we're at the very beginnings right now of actually having to deal with this $30+ trillion in debt. And it only gets worse if you don't deal with it.
And I think for the first time in many of our lives, you're looking at what it means when the government spends in such an out-of-control way at the home level, right? The reason everything's so much more expensive now is because of all that printed money, all that debt that's been incurred. And now Americans are suffering as a result of it. The average American is meaningfully poorer than they were when Joe Biden took office. That number, I mean, if the interest rates go up, the interest rate payments on the debt, as you just explained, go up as well, which means that we're in this vicious cycle where the government needs to do what? They need to either tax you more or print more cash in order to make debt service payments. That it is just totally insane.
Well, we're looking at, I used to say the fastest growing program in the United States was Medicare, and that was true for a while. The fastest growing program in the United States is now debt servicing. So pretty soon we're going to be spending over $1 trillion a year in just paying off our old bills. So hats off to people who are fighting in Washington right now, raising the awareness on this issue. And I know sometimes it seems like a kamikaze mission, but someone sometime has to actually stand up and be like, you know what, we've got to do some cuts. And what's just absurd to me about this whole exercise is that what we are talking about are such small rounding error cuts that no one in America is going to notice. No one. And look how hard it is. But you got to start somewhere. So at least we're starting here. So I don't care what the political considerations are. Someone's fighting for my kids and my future, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, the percentages are very small. And everything is about non-defense discretionary spending. Defense, of course, is this massive feature of the federal budget, and in Washington it is sacrosanct. You can't touch it at all. There is no wasteful spending in the Defense Department. Let's never take a second look at it, and that's ridiculous. I talk to veterans and they're like, yeah, of course there's wasteful spending, of course there's things we can fix, but defense goes, it's not allowed to be touched, is it, Adam?
I think this starts getting ridiculous. Everything should be allowed to be. There's waste, fraud, and everything. I also point out there's 3 major nuclear powers in this country, or in this world: Russia, China, the United States, 2 of which have operational strategic hypersonic weapons. Who's the only country of those 3 that doesn't have that? The United States. You know what? If we're going to spend money, that sounds to me like a smart place to spend. So my question for the Defense Department is, you may be spending $850 billion, but are you really putting it in the places that are absolutely necessary for our national defense? I think those are legitimate questions that the House of Representatives and Senate need to bring up in this whole spending conversation.
Well, that's going to take away money from the search and rescue teams that look for F-35s that disappear, Adam. We need that money.
It's amazing when you start seeing the numbers on these things, like some of these jets that are running $100 million a jet, and weapons programs in the tens of billions. Like, it boggles the mind. And again, when I think about future conflicts, the history is littered with people who can't afford their militaries anymore. And I worry that I look at this debt and deficit issue that we're talking about. This is a national security issue, because if we got to pay the bill someday on all of this, we're going to have to take it out of places like our defense budget. We may have to cut things that we don't want to have.
Right. And this comes as Washington is limiting the production of our free market at the same time. So not only are they running up the debt, they're cutting off your ability to actually generate productive industries. So they keep like backhanding the energy industry over and over and over again, when that seems to be the critical element to bring us towards a more secure country in terms of national security and a more thriving country in terms of productive exports that generate a lot of revenue.
I'm actually writing a piece on my computer right now where I'm saying, where I see one of these grand bargains that could happen is between the right and the left is, and I think we could all agree that it's probably a really good thing if we maximize, say, nuclear power and we maximize natural gas production. Because even if you don't believe in climate change, that's something that's easy to get behind. And if climate change is your religion, that should be something you should be able to get behind too. We have such a blessing with our energy resources in this country. We should be fully leaning into those because natural gas, that is what's replacing our coal. I mean, it's a cheaper and easier fuel supply. All the impediments to nuclear power. It blows my mind when I hear Germany supposedly trying to be one of the greenest countries on earth,
yes,
turning its back on nuclear, so they have to burn more coal. Well, that's smart.
Yeah, it's moronic. This is so simple that even Kamala Harris could understand it. It's a Venn diagram of all of the people who exist in our country. The overlap is nuclear power, definitely, and maybe natural gas to some meaningful extent. You're totally right about that, but they don't want that to happen. Why is that? Why are we so reliant on, like foreign petro dictators for all of our energy now?
Come on, we know we're not going to be able to use wind and solar to meet the demand. Like, you can't have that both ways. You can't ask everyone to drive an electric car and then just make it almost impossible to produce electric in this country by banning CO2 production at these power plants. You can't do it all. You want us to all move to electric cars? Okay, we could have a policy conversation on that, but you're going to need a whole lot more electric than we've got right now. Yeah. And that does not mean that windmills are going to meet that demand.
Right, I know. And what's funny about all this is, like, they pretend for a moment like, oh, electric cars are the answer. And then a couple months later, they're like, actually, electric cars are worse for the environment than the internal combustion engine. You seen this? And they start doing these heel turns on the technology. I just saw a thing today from the Daily Mail. Do you know how they get rid of these wind turbines? Like, when they fail, like at the end of their usable life? They can't recycle them. There's no meaningful, efficient way to recycle them. So they pile them up in open air graves and then cover them in dirt. It's like, well, how is that good for the environment? How is any of this good for the environment? It's nuts.
Like, it all comes back to the same. It's a war on the suburbs. And with most Americans, I was reading about this Energy Star thing once, and it was saying that, like, reset your house to something crazy, like 84 or 86 degrees. And it's just stunning when you think, like, I don't think when the bill starts coming due, Americans are going to reject a lot of this change so fast. I mean, that's why I look at, hey, there's ways we could agree to move forward. Natural gas, nuclear, great. Let's do that and let's move on. But some of the other things I hear, it's almost like they want everyone to abandon the suburbs and move into the city and live in an efficiency apartment at 84 degrees and drive a smart car or a bike. I mean, that's just not something Americans are going to be down with. It's just not.
And look, Washington sends a lot of messages. Most of them are contempt for the voters, honestly. And another example of this going into this potential government shutdown as soon as this weekend is that many federal employees and contractors are going to have to go either without pay or be furloughed as a result of a government shutdown. But the Ukrainian government's going to be fully funded up by the American taxpayer. Isn't that an amazing thing? So if we have a government shutdown, we are going to be dumping tons of cash into making sure that the Ukrainian government stays open. But our government, those federal employees, good luck. Let's see when you get paid eventually.
Yeah, that's quite the commentary. But I also look at, when you look at the amount of dollars that are spent, we're arguing over less than a fifth of the entire U.S. budget right now. The shutdown, I'm sure, like, if you're trying to go use a restroom at a national park, it could be inconvenient potentially. And I can't wait to see the old Jersey walls be put up around the Capitol and all that. But
literally around the World War II memorial. Do you remember Obama doing that? He puts it around the World War II memorial, which is just pavement. All you have to do is walk across it. And they said, nope, you can't walk into this area with pavement because the government is shut down. They wanted people to feel the pain. They wanted World War II veterans on these honor flights to arrive in D.C. and not be able to visit their own memorial.
It is ridiculous. The amount of effort to put up the barriers to stop people from walking across the pavement is just stunning. But I mean, look, there's going to be some delays for things here or there, and there's always, but for the most part, I think America will just move on without really noticing. And then, Social Security checks still are going to be mailed and all the rest of it. That stuff is built in. But again, this is over just a small portion. And we need to start getting used to this conversation because we're going to have to make some cuts. And I think it's two things. You got to start making some cuts and some adjustments, and then you got to grow the heck out of the economy. Going back to that conversation about energy, you grow the economy and you flatline or make cuts. Yeah, we'll get this thing put back in shape. But at some point, you got to stop spending trillions and trillions of dollars. Like every debate we have on spending, debating about borrowed money. And so like going back to that Ukraine comment, like God bless the Ukrainians, I wish them well, but every cent we're sending them, we're borrowing. So it's not just we're giving them money now, but our kids are going to be paying the interest on that.
Yeah. We need to be a country that produces something. We need commodities. We need how did basic economic understanding go out the window for everybody? It's like not everyone can sit at home and be an app developer, and we can't continue to print $1,000, dollars a second. It just doesn't work that way. But that's where we are right now. Adam, Brandon, you've been on this for years. Thank you very much for still paying attention to it and fighting the good fight. Thank you, sir.
Hey, I'm not getting off of it. This is my life's work. How am I doing? Am I doing well? Shrinking government? I've been at this for like 20 years now.
Well, don't beat yourself up too badly. A lot of us have failed. Thank you very much.
I'll get there. My victory's coming. I'm sure of it.
At some point. Thank you, Adam. Good to talk to you today. It's 4:50 now.
News Talk 105.9.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Yeah, I've got to get into. There was a big 60 Minutes segment this weekend taking a look at how Americans are spending their money in Ukraine. You may not be surprised to find out that we have no idea. It's just a lot of it's being lost. Hundreds of government officials now accused of corruption in Ukraine with our money. Our money. So, maybe a closer look at that would be worth it. And it's amazing. Just insult. An insult to the American people that we are going to continue to pay for the entire government in Ukraine to be sustained, all the way down to the pensions, firefighters, healthcare workers, everybody. But employees in this area who are paid by the federal government or who are federal contractors are going to have to figure out how to make ends meet if a government shutdown comes to pass. That's Washington for you, isn't it? Let me get Mark from Virginia Beach in here, line 2. Mark, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how are you?
Good, sir.
Well, I called to make comment about the gentleman that was on just a few minutes ago.
Adam Brandon.
The question is, yes, sir, very good interview. If not now, when? These people just keep pushing this thing down. But before you make comment, I was listening to another show on this station, Brian Kilmeade, and he is having a great deal of heartburn with those Republican senators that are supposedly the fiscal conservatives. A lot of heartburn from him. Instead of supporting them and saying, shut it down, get the cutting the spending cuts that we need. He's arguing with them.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Got it. Yeah, I don't. So Brian Kilmeade is a host over on the Fox News channel, and he does a radio program as well. I haven't heard any of his arguments on this. So you're saying that he's against cutting spending? He thinks that this is too risky?
No, he's mad with those senators that are holding up the bill. He thinks that they should pass and then a continuing resolution and then continue to negotiate. Now, the only way to get those doggone Democrats to move is to shut the doggone government down. It's not going to hurt anybody. Everybody's going to get paid anyway.
Yeah, after the furloughs. You've got to use your leverage. In other words, whatever it is, you have to use it to secure a better outcome for the American people. And the trick here is to concentrate on what actually matters to the American people. I think that would be a good start here. Mark, thank you very much. It's a smart point. Use your leverage. This has been another small sampling of The Art of the Deal, written by Donald Trump. Use your leverage. Did Trump write the whole art of the deal? I think he had a guy who wrote it with him, a ghostwriter, whatever. It's the greatest book of all time, as you know. All right, hold tight. I've got joining us in the next hour a sitting U.S. Congressman, Matt Rosendale, will talk to us. We'll talk about this subject and so much more.